This is Jeff Mucci with RCR Wireless News, and today we are talking with ITU about a recent announcement they had with Georgia Tech around monitoring and collaborating around IoT standards. So today's guest is Dr. Bilel Jamoussi. Is that close enough?
Very good. Thank you.
And Bilel is Chief of the Study Groups Department of the ITU. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start with the ITU Standardization Sector and how your group, the Study Groups Department, fits into that organization.
So the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, is a specialized agency of the UN looking after the information and communication technologies as a whole. This year we're celebrating the 150th anniversary of this organization. And it started by looking after the telegraph standards. And as technology evolved, ITU has evolved with those technology standards that are required to connect the world. And the latest technology that we're working on is the Internet of Things. And now we have a special study group working on standardizing IoT and its application, such as in smart cities, for example. So my role is really to coordinate the overall activity in the Standardization Bureau of the ITU, including the Internet of Things.
So how do you work with groups like IEEE and others that are also working on IoT standards?
Sure. So IEEE is one of the sector members. It is one of the members of the ITU, because ITU is the international platform. It's the organization that has membership of 193 member states or governments. About 700 private entities, including some organizations such as the IEEE, ISO, IEC, or ETSI in Europe, ISOC for the Internet Society.
Yep.
So it provides a platform where private sector, public sector, and most recently academia, such as Georgia Tech, play a role in developing standards for international use.
Well, you mentioned academia as part of your I guess, mission and work group. Why did you select Georgia Tech out of all the universities in the world?
Well, Georgia Tech was one of the pioneering universities that joined ITU as an academia member and has been very keen on the topic of the Internet of Things. One of the professors working in Georgia Tech, Alain Boucher, chaired one of our initial IoT workshops very successfully a couple of years ago, and then we published a blog on IoT. So we kind of established a very close relationship with Georgia Tech as one of our academic members interested in this topic of the Internet of Things, which led to really the development of this MOU or collaboration agreement with Georgia Tech.
Well, I thought the wording of the press release was particularly interesting because it said monitor standards and collaborate around standards. What do those words really mean, and how will you measure success?
So the Internet of Things landscape is very crowded for standards. There are many organizations being set up almost on a daily basis looking at IoT standards from different angles. So the monitoring of the IoT standards comes from that perspective that Georgia Tech having a center working on IoT could provide a very valuable input to the international community by having a horizontal surveillance of the IoT standards landscape and then feeding it into the study group in the ITU to tell us, what are the organizations, what are they working on, and how can we collaborate to bring their niche developments or broader developments into the international platform of the ITU. So the ITU study group then would play a consolidating role in bringing all of those inputs into the international standard. So Georgia Tech would be a partner in that activity, monitoring and collaborating with the international community through this MOU.
So how do you plan on measuring success, and what are some of the specific deliverables that might come out of this agreement?
Well, I think the success will be in the interactions that we will have in terms of the input that will come from Georgia Tech into the study group, its level of adoption at the international level, in how it can help us really understand and decipher the complexity in the standards landscape. So the success will be downstream as we move forward with this MOU that was just signed a couple months ago. Will be really in the contribution from Georgia Tech to help the study group and the international community, but also from the ITU to help the center working in Georgia Tech on IoT to provide focus on what are the key topics at the international level that Georgia Tech can further develop. So it's a win-win relationship between the university and the ITU.
And who are some of the other members of the work group?
The work group includes a number of member states of governments, US government, for example, Singapore, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Russia. So it's really very much an international setting. Mm-hmm. But it also includes a number of companies, Cisco Systems, Intel from the US, Huawei from China, a number of smaller players that work on IoT specific issues, and also other universities that are members of the ITU. So this study group is open to the entire membership of the ITU, which includes the member states, the private sector, and the academia.
I got it. And will you work on licensed and unlicensed connectivity, or is it going to be biased one way or the other?
Really, the work in the standardization sector is agnostic to the frequency used. We have a sister organization in ITU, our ITUR, or radio sector, that looks after the frequencies and the radio aspects. In the Standardization Bureau, we're focused primarily on the protocols, on the security of the transactions, on the overall architecture of IoT, on the application of IoT into smart cities. Sensors and devices are a key enabler for smart cities, and the data that's collected from those devices, perhaps even the privacy issues around the data collected and how to harvest it in an analytical fashion to provide some intelligence and smartness into the city mayor office to make better decisions and manage the city better.
Well, I think the one thing that is absolutely for certain, it is a complex ecosystem where you've got at the embedded chip level, moving up to the system on the chip, the modules, the network connectivity, the platform that creates unification in the architecture. You'll certainly have cloud aspects. Are there? You mentioned specifically the word at the protocol level. Can you expand upon that as it relates to maybe some of these different layers of the OSI stack?
Well, at the lowest layer of the interaction between the device, the thing, and the network, there has to be a very thin layer protocol, because most of these devices are very constrained in terms of memory and CPU and power. So you want to really have a very thin layer protocol. Today, there is a diversity of protocols. There's also a diversity of identification systems, because you need to identify the thing, the device that you're communicating with. RFIDs are quite, all over the place, and that's one sort of identification system. Others are talking about perhaps using IPv6 because it provides a larger address space. So the identification and the protocol that would connect the device to the network, and then further connectivity from the network onwards, are some of the things that this study group is looking at. And in the ITU and other study groups, we have been looking at the overall architecture and framework of IoT for a couple of years now.
Well, we produce a show each week called IoT Innovation, and we've been writing and talking about some of the initiatives across Europe with the EU Horizon 2020, Germany's 4.0, China's Made in China 2020. Here in the U.S., it may be less formal, but you certainly got the industry consortium and some NSA, Science Foundation funding that's gone into some IoT programs. How does the ITU work with some of those sovereign initiatives or country-based initiatives?
Well, it's really the ITU study groups work on contributions coming from the membership. So it all depends what contributions come to a given meeting. So if a member state decides to bring some of those issues to the discussion with the purpose or the objective to get alignment on an international standard or on a guideline or a non-normative document, the members of the committee or the study group would discuss that contribution. If they see that's something that they can all agree to by consensus, then it moves forward and becomes an international recommendation from ITU. So it's really based on what member states and private sector wants to bring and academia want to bring to the table for discussion.
Got it. Well, in closing here, your press release talks about global IoT events and, limited, including but not limited to workshops and conference. What can we expect in 2016 in terms of events or programs that you'll be putting together?
Yeah. So the first event in 2016 will be in Singapore, because Singapore is one of the smart cities that is very keen on using IoT to further enhance the smartness in Singapore. They talk about the smart nation. So we'll kick off the year with that. And then throughout 2016, we have a number of other events. One of them could be in the US, could be hosted in collaboration with Georgia Tech. We don't have any firm dates yet, but that's the idea of these global events and global collaboration, especially if we are having something in North America. The ITU being in Geneva, it's very helpful to have a partner such as Georgia Tech to do something in the US to bring not only US and Canada, but also reach out to Latin America.
Well, you've mentioned smart cities a number of times today, and I think smart cities, intelligent transport systems, the gathering of data from those smart city initiatives, coupled with smart factories, are two of the, I think, more exciting areas that we're seeing here at RCR. With respect to smart cities, when you think of smart cities in your work groups or you personally, what does a smart city look like to you, and where are we in terms of reaping the full benefits of smart city technology?
Well, it's good that you asked that question, because we have been working on smart cities now for 2 years, and we had a focus group that was open to non-members as well, and we developed 21 technical reports on smart cities, starting by the definition. A smart city is really a city that leverages ICT in enhancing the life of citizens in the city. And we developed also a set of KPIs, or key performance indicators, that is enabling or helping cities measure how they are in the ladder of smart city. And last year we signed a collaboration agreement with Dubai as one of the initial smart cities to really measure the degree according to these KPIs. And then later on we signed another agreement with Singapore to also use those KPIs, key performance indicators from the focus group, to measure how smart the city is. But in a nutshell, it's about using ICTs to have better traffic management in the city, have better safety in the city, better management of the waste and e-waste disposal systems, have better management on the water distribution, water leakage, etc. Smart grid comes into the smart city fold. So all of the elements using information and communication technologies that reduce the cost of management of a city and provide better services to the citizen to enable a healthier, happier life is what smart cities are about. And now we're trying to build the technology building blocks and the standards in place to reach those objectives.
That's a great response. I appreciate that. If folks wanted to learn more about those 21 papers or learn more about your work produced by your group, where would they go?
They can come to the ITUT website. It's www.itu.int for international. And then they go in the standardization sector and they will find all of our reports, all of our papers are publicly available, free of charge in PDF form that they can download.
Well, thank you for your time today. I hope you find a way to Austin, Texas. We like to think Austin is one of the original smart cities. We did deploy an early smart grid system here, and we do have a nice ecosystem. So we'll see if we can't get Georgia Tech to come visit us here, or maybe collaborate with University of Texas in Austin.
I'd love to. I've been in Austin once before while I was working in the US, but I'd love to come back and have something there.
Well, great. Bilel, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.